Hey everyone, welcome to our Wednesday Live, and great to have y'all join in. Listen, got a great one for you today, and I want to say this before we get going. Don't be afraid. All kinds of bad news is thrown at us all the time. But we have the hope of Jesus Christ. We know what the Bible says, the direction everything is going. So be strong in the Lord. Don't let these things trouble you. Remember what the Bible does tell us. Don't turn to the left or the right. Stay focused. Jesus is coming. Hey, listen, this Saturday, if you can join us, we have our prophecy update, our annual prophecy update. Do it every New Year's Eve. I've been doing them for about 20 years now. Joining me is going to be Brandon Holthouse. I will be in-house at 412 Church if you want to join me in person. And then we're going to Zoom live. Brandon Holthouse is going to be joining us from Bakersfield. It's going to be a terrific time, and we're going to be talking about things we can't normally talk about. It's going to be exciting. Hope that you can join us. And let's get going. All right. So this first article is titled "The Great Reset: Towers in Babel" by Will Alexander, and points out some great things. Talks about the Tower of Babel back in the book of Genesis, when God destroyed the Tower of Babel and separated people into groups according to language that he had given them, and they went and dispersed to various parts of the world. They were trying to have this world order that confronted God. Well, ever since then, men have been trying to get back together to build a new world order, a global system, in an affront to God, saying, we're going to rule this, we're going to have a utopian world, and God, you're not invited. Okay. So, Will Alexander says, fast forward from the Tower of Babel to 2022. He writes this: despite the near magical advance of human invention, the same rebel spirit that inspired the tower in the ancient city of Babel, eventually Babylon, thrives today. Think of Revelation chapter 17. You think of this Babylon spirit that has infiltrated virtually every part of the world, going all the way back to the beginning, right on up to where we are today. Think of that. Then he continues and says, unelected global elites using fear and force have big plans for the world, and unless I missed it, submission to God is not in them. In other words, none of these elites want God to be part of their plan. In fact, in Psalm 2, God talks about the time when men will gather together, they'll take counsel together and say, let us remove his restraints from us. Get rid of God. We don't want him anywhere around us. We certainly see that taking place in the leadership of the world now. Will Alexander continues, elite revolutionaries are working feverishly on cutting-edge technologies to avert a flood of climate catastrophes that, more than likely, will never happen. To save the planet, they've turned to the gods of science and money. And then he quotes Antonio Guterres from the UN General Secretary. And he says this is the quote, Antonio Guterres: we are on a fast track to climate disaster. Major cities underwater, unprecedented heat waves, terrifying storms, widespread water shortages, the extinction of 1 million species of plants and animals. And this is not fiction or exaggeration. This is what science tells us will result from our current energy policies. This is a climate emergency. I mean, you listen to this rhetoric, and you know, people say if you're into Bible prophecy, they say you're a fearmonger. Is that really the case? I mean, you listen to what these people are saying. They're trying to scare everybody to death so they will surrender to this global system because only they can solve the problems of the world. That's what they want to do. They bring the fear, we bring in the level-headedness. Listen, this is what the Bible says. This is what they're going to do. And we can tell exactly the direction that they are going. In fact, Isaiah wrote this, the words of God in the book of Isaiah chapter 46, where God said, remember this and show yourselves men. Be a man. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Listen, in Proverbs chapter 29, Solomon wrote, the fear of man is a snare. It's a trap. It'll trap you in. Don't be afraid of what these people are saying. The fear of man is a snare, Solomon wrote, but it is God who keeps us safe. And then God says, recall to mind, O you transgressors, remember the former things of old. For I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand and I will do all my pleasure. It will happen. Listen, these globalists have their plan. In fact, it continues, Will Alexander does and says, leaders in governments, businesses, and global institutions who believe the planet has a better chance by working together have created a highly influential global movement to reconstruct a better world, a great reset. In other words, better than the one that we currently live in. This is an attack from the devil himself. Thanks to technology, the movement towers over anything the planet has ever seen except the flood. So think of the Tower of Babel, right? We're going to rebuild. We're going to make this place even better. Again, Will Alexander writes, thanks to technology, this current global movement towers over anything the planet has ever seen except the flood in a global effort to remake the world. And then he writes, but normal is not part of their plan. And then quoting Klaus Schwab, he says, many of us are pondering when things will return to normal. They will not. He wrote in his book, The Great Reset. Remember that? Klaus Schwab, The Great Reset. New York Times said there is no such thing as a Great Reset. And that was right after Klaus Schwab had already written the book on The Great Reset. When will things turn to normal? They will not. Never is the quote. Nothing will ever return to the broken sense of normalcy that prevailed before the crisis because the coronavirus pandemic marks a fundamental inflection point in our global trajectory. A new world will emerge, wrote Schwab, the contours of which are for us to both imagine and to draw. The future is not just happening. He said at Davos in May, the future is built by us. I mean, you look at that, they're saying this will happen. You want to know something else? I'll tell you what's going to happen. They've got their plan, this utopian world. It's going to be like the shortest lived world government in the history of the world. 7 years max. That's max. Max. 3.5 years into it, they're going to have all kinds of problems. And also 3.5 years into it, they're going to wreak all kinds of hell on this earth. Listen, 7 years max, but the new world order, the real new world order is coming when Jesus comes back and he crushes that. Think of the statue of the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 2, when the Lord returns and he crushes this system that these globalists are trying to build. Yes, they're going to try to build it, but this will happen. Jesus is coming back. Again, God said, I will do all my pleasure, Isaiah chapter 46, verse 10. And then he continued in verse 11, indeed, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. God says, I'm going to do it. This will happen. And then continuing 2 more verses, listen to me, you stubborn-hearted who are far from righteousness. I bring my righteousness near. It shall not be far off. My salvation shall not linger. And I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. This will happen. Jesus is coming back, and he's going to rule and reign from Jerusalem. Listen, God bless you guys. Hey, hope you can join me this Saturday, New Year's Eve, a live prophecy update, annual prophecy update with Brandon Holthouse. Until then, God bless.